The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, was the first to fire the shots on Uber, refusing to renew a licence for a company he felt had got many things wrong. But of course, Uber's just one company, cabs are just one sector. And as Labour embraces what its business minister today called the fourth industrial revolution, how far are they prepared to take a stand against big business and the new economy? Here's John Sweeney. And if you wondered whether John McDonnell uses Uber, watch on.
Brighton has always been at the cutting edge of technology, ever since it invented the beach in 1783, or something like that. In the last few days, some say, the neighbourhood's gone downhill. Now that London Mayor Sadiq Khan has picked a fight with Uber, is Labour anti-tech? The war on Uber, good thing, bad thing?
Good thing. I think it's negative.
I think Uber's definitely not the most ethical company if you look at its record with self-employment law and abusing its workers.
I live in London and I use it a lot. However, I think if they are not following the rules, then they need to be brought in to get their house in order.
Personally, I think Uber's really important. I think as a company, I think they've made headways with the whole transport thing.
But ultimately, if you don't play by the rules, then you shouldn't be allowed to practice in London, yeah?
I've never downloaded the app, I've never paid for it, I'm not going to give them any money. I do use Amazon, unfortunately.
Shame on you.
I know, yeah.
People say they don't pay enough tax, they don't treat their workers properly. Do you use Amazon? Yes or no? Do you use Amazon, yes or no?
I do. For a whole year I stopped using them because of that, but unfortunately they are very convenient.
Two quick questions.
Yes, go on.
Uber, the challenge to Uber. Do you use Uber yourself?
Not that I'm aware of, and I haven't used Uber, I believe, either. On the challenge to Uber, obviously I can't comment on the legal challenge itself, but the issue is down to the company. TfL implements the regulations. If the company isn't abiding by the regulations, it should address that.
What about Amazon? Do you use that yourself?
Sometimes I believe.
Isn't that a bit naughty?
What?
Isn't that a bit naughty?
Well, I've been campaigning on their tax campaign as well, that's right, as well. So I'm quite considered about it.
Isn't there a real difficulty in the 21st century? How do you say?
Yeah.
Because in the old days, you didn't eat South African fruit.
Yeah.
Some people didn't. I didn't.
Yeah.
But this is really difficult.
No, it is difficult. You have moral choices to make, and sometimes it's as a result of, well, like Uber, people have been using that because it's cheap, etc. But a lot of people now are waking up to the fact that, well, because of TfL's ruling, there are real issues that have to be addressed. So I think the moral pressure on any company like that is to get within the regulations itself.
Are the people in there who are a little bit hypocritical, who are denouncing Uber or Amazon, and actually got their apps on the phone? Is that a possibility?
It's definitely a possibility. There's always hypocrites.
Obviously I can't speak for everyone, but I think so, yeah.
Say that louder.
Yes, most likely. You're putting me on the spot here.
John Sweeney doing what he does best. Joining us now, Paul Mason and Phil Collins. Do you use Uber?
No. No, I don't have it on my phone.
Out of principle?
No, out of inertia and laziness and being quite Luddite.
Was it right for Labour to take on Uber?
Well, I mean, bear in mind, I think that's one way of framing it. I mean, this is TfL, the regulator, which has come to the decision, and whether Labour takes Uber on in due course, we shall see. Sadiq Khan has sanctioned that decision so far, but we'll see. In the specific instance, there's lots of things Uber need to address, and their CEO has apologised for some of their practices, so they've conceded to some extent. So I don't think it's quite as stark as Labour taking on Uber. This
starts, though, doesn't it, Paul, with Uber, but the bigger question, I guess, for Labour is, does it want to be on the side of the consumers or the producers? Does it want to back disruptive business, longer-term technology, innovation, all the rest of it, or the consumer?
That is a good question, but I don't think it's the one posed by Uber, because, Uber, the reason we have transport regulators is because transport systems in cities are public systems. Now, the transport regulator in London has said they're not up to scratch, and I would argue they are protecting the consumer. But there's an obvious problem. The campaign has been waged by a Labour-affiliated trade union, the GMB. It wants, as I want, the maximum amount of stable, contracted employment. We think that is a good thing for the economy, and precarious work, where it's not only self-employed, but that the drivers have to actually buy their own car, is a regressive thing.
I mean, let's widen it out. It's not just Uber, it's Airbnb, it's Amazon, it's all these things. Phil, is that right? You know, as a Labour supporter, you have to be putting the worker first, don't you?
Well, I do think you've hit on something there. I mean, if you go back to the origins of the Labour Party, it begins as the organised representatives of the trade union movement, and it is the placing of working men, as it was, and then women, into Parliament. So, without doubt, the Labour Party begins as the party of the producers, and the Labour Party always has to be conscious that that's how it's seen. And part of what you're often trying to do in government is to represent everybody, and the Labour Party is always suspected of being the party of the producers. So it needs to be careful in instances like this. I agree with Paul, though, that this is a more complex thing, because when you had companies that employed people in the usual way, then it was easier to regulate. Now what we've got are these very disembodied entities, which even claim they're not quite companies. So we're trying to do regulation in an entirely new environment.
I mean, you know, Amazon, Google, do you use those? Do you feel that you can be a sort of staunch Corbyn supporter and use Amazon?
Absolutely. The reason I don't use it, but I don't use Uber because I do think that its business model is, you know, antisocial. I think it is there to destroy.
But I want to widen this out. I mean, why I'm asking about Amazon now is because that represents, supporter Len McCluskey, a company that is, you could argue, eating up a lot of other businesses along the way.
So we need competition law to force it to not unfairly monopolise. But more than that, you know, I don't want to dwell on Uber, but let's just talk in the generic sense. Companies are in business now to try and monopolise the future. So
the future?
Yes, in the sense that at some point London's transport, the future market.
Just the future?
Yes, the future.
Well,
because
what does that mean?
Future.
Listen to this. At some point, London's transport system will be integrated and controlled by one computer. Either that transport system will be essentially a centralised free system, or it will be individual vehicles negotiating a price for their place in the queue. Now, only one of them is compatible with Uber's business model, and the $62 billion that is now bet on that business model.
This sounds like a sort of nationalisation of the whole thing.
Well,
then
it's implicit in the technology. Either one mind runs it, or many minds run it.
Well, there's a tendency to monopoly, and we've known this for a long time. But regulation is there to impose a competitive structure upon a marketplace, and we will be able to impose competitive structures even in this new environment. That's what a regulator is there to do. I mean, markets are nothing other than the sum of the rules and regulations that we prescribe to make them work. And that's what we're trying to do that now, in a way we've got companies with the capacity to do things we never had before, and we're struggling with it.
If you were embracing the true heart of Corbynism, would you be saying no Airbnb? I don't like what Airbnb is doing to, you know, small business hotels.
That's what the Berlin City Council has done. It's banned Airbnb.
Are you there?
I would do that, yeah.
And what else would you ban? Would you?
Well, no, it's not so much banning. You can place.
Well, it is banning, though, isn't it?
No, what you say is if you're prepared to obey the rules, if you're prepared to obey the rules of this city, you can operate like any other tourist hotel.
And would you put social media, Google or YouTube?
No, because Google has its market position because it was a brilliant, good search engine to start with. That's what its market capitalisation is based on. Uber, Airbnb are based on the idea of a rent-seeking business model that has no innovative technology.
Maybe that's right.
Well, no, what they do is they provide a service to the consumer at a lower price than they're currently gaining. Let's not pretend that the London taxi market isn't heavily regulated and perfect as it is.
I'm going to end there. Thank you both very much indeed.